everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you all about loom weaving, including the different types of looms, the affordability, the environmental impact, and what you need to get started. I hope everyone's been doing well. Today has been so nice and crisp. It's one of those autumnal mornings, so I'm very happy about that. Lovely clear skies, but a nice kind of chill to the air is amazing. But with today's podcast, just to say again, the dog is back in the room with me. He cannot leave my side apparently today. I'm finding it very difficult to get anything done or recorded without him being right next to me, so apologies again if you hear any weird noises. He doesn't like to be out of the room, so I have to have him right by my side. But with today's episode, I'm so excited to talk all about loom weaving. Now for me, I got into loom weaving actually after I found macrame, and it's one of those crafts that are super relaxing. I find it very calming. And I think I picked it up very, very quickly. I know that with things like knitting and crochet, I really struggled to understand it. But with loom weaving, it's something that just works for my brain. I really like the use of different materials that you can pop in there and the amount of different types of looms that you can get as well. I didn't know anything about that when I first started. I only had seen maybe 2 different styles of looms, but the more I do weaving, the more I learn about all the different types of looms. So I will be talking about that today. I will also be talking about affordability. Depending on the loom that you pick will also depend on how much money you're willing to spend. You can pretty much spend nearly next to nothing, but you could also spend quite a lot of money on a loom. So it depends on what you're looking for in terms of what you want to make with your project. So I will be talking about that. I'll also be talking about the environmental impact, because I think that's quite a big thing there. Especially for me, I like to think of the environmental impact of my art. So we'll be discussing that. And then lastly, we'll be talking about actually how to get started in loom weaving and the beginner essentials that you're going to be needing. So starting off with the different types of looms. This is not an extensive list. This is just a few examples here because there's so many different types of looms that you can get. But I'll talk you through some of the main ones here. So the first one is a frame loom, sometimes known as a lap loom. And it's basically a simple wooden or metal frame where yarn is stretched vertically, so that's the warp, and then you weave horizontally with a shuttle or a needle. Sometimes people just like to weave with their fingers as well. But it's really good for things like smaller wall hangings or little coasters. That's the main things that I've seen people do with it. This is a really good type of loom for a beginner. You can see it in actually quite a lot of craft shops and online. So it is very affordable and easily portable. I have several in different sizes in my office here. So it's a really, really good way to get started. So I would definitely say it's a great starting point, low cost and easy to set up. But the downside to it is a bit more limited in size and patterns. You can make larger work out of it, but you would have to incorporate sewing into that, sewing individual pieces together as well. So it's a little bit more limited than some of the other looms. So the next one is the rigid heddle loom, and I've got one recently and I'm super excited to use it. And basically what it is a small portable table loom with a heddle, which is basically like a comb-like piece, and it lifts the warp threads. And the great thing about this is that it is a little bit more affordable and a bit more beginner friendly than some of the larger looms. And you can do much longer, bigger projects out of it. So I'm talking about things like scarves, table runners or placemats. You can do a much longer continuous weave out of it. And this is really good for more kind of functional projects as well. So depending on your project will maybe depend on what kind of loom you want to get there, but it's definitely a lot more compact and affordable compared to bigger looms there. The downside to it is less advanced than multi-shaft looms, and it does have some pattern limitations. You're not going to get as much out of it as you would a much larger loom, but then again, if you're not spending as much money, you're going to be a little bit more limited, but it's a really good starting point there. The next one is a table loom, which is a more advanced loom that sits on a table and usually has multiple shafts to it. And this is really good for pattern fabrics, much more complex structures, so things like twills, herringbone, more texture to it. And this is good for weavers who want to experiment a little bit more with patterns but don't either want or can afford a giant floor loom. So it's good in terms of its compact size, but it also allows that variety of those different weave structures as well. But the downside to it is more expensive than your lap loom or your rigid heddle loom, and it's not as portable. But then again, it's a little bit more affordable than getting a floor loom. Now, the next one is a floor loom. These are the ones that you may have seen before, maybe in like a movie or TV. So this is a large freestanding loom with pedals and multiple shafts, and professional weavers often use this. This one is great for much more complex, large-scale weaving. So it's for really serious weavers who will be wanting to spend the money on a bigger loom and are maybe a little bit more advanced and a little bit more skilled with their weaving there. So if you're looking at something like this, it is definitely an investment, and I would practice a lot more before you get up to this one. But it is very versatile and very powerful. But like I said, it can be very expensive, needs a lot of space, long setup time, and it does need a lot of experience as well. And the last loom in this shorter list is the circular loom, and this is the one that I really like to work with. And basically it's a round frame, and you can get this in different types, so wood, metal. You can make a DIY one with an embroidery hoop, and this is where the warp is radiated out like spokes of a wheel. And basically what it's best for is round weavings, so you can make wall hangings, coasters, round placemats, rugs, things like that. So anything circular, that's what you're looking at there. And this is good, again, for beginners. You can do much more simple projects with this as well. And it's very accessible. You can literally just make one from an embroidery hoop or even cardboard, make some really striking designs as well. And you can use all sorts of different fabrics in there. However, the downside, obviously, it's limited to circular designs there, and it can be trickier finishing the process compared to square or rectangular looms. And you do have to sometimes think about the amount of warp threads that you've got on your circular loom, depending on the type of weaving you want to do. So I would say generally it's good for a beginner, but it depends on how complicated you want your project to be. Now, like I said before, this is not the entire list of different looms. There's so many more other ones that you can find. I've recently been working a lot more with the small flower looms as well to make little flower designs. So there are plenty more that you can research, and I'll probably talk about them more in future podcast episodes. But hopefully that list is a good list to get you started. Now, in terms of affordability and accessibility, you do not need to invest in a big loom to get started in weaving. You can really bring it back down to basics and make your own DIY cardboard loom. And this is not only great for adults, but also really good for children as well. So you can make a very simple rectangular loom. You could make a little kind of bookmark loom, or you could even try different shapes. You could try a cloud shape or a circle, literally just cutting those shapes out of some cardboard and then cutting little slits in it so that you can warp your yarn around it. So that's the really basic one that you could do just to maybe test weaving, see if you enjoy it. And then if you do, I would then recommend getting started in a frame or lap loom. because that's a good starting point there. It's inexpensive and it's similar to the cardboard there in its structure of being rectangular. So it's a nice one to get started with. So obviously if you really enjoy that, you can then try different looms as well. Now you can get these frame looms from shops, your local craft shop, or online. And like I said before, they're not too expensive and they are easily accessible. And in terms of the fabric that you can use with them, you can start off with yarn scraps, recycled fabric strips. Instead of buying new yarn, if you've got anything lying around, some ribbons or something like that, or maybe leftover yarn from a different project there, that's a good way and inexpensive to get started with that. Or if you need to buy your yarn, you could start with something really cheap. It doesn't have to be expensive. You know, look out for cheaper yarns or ribbons, whatever it may be. You can even cut up old t-shirts into strips as well there. So you really do not need to go out and spend loads of money to get started with. And I would just do a little bit of experimenting, see what you enjoy with it. If you enjoy it, try different fabrics there, try different materials and see what you like before investing more. Also, in terms of any tools that come with it, you can literally make a shuttle out of a bit of cardboard as well and pop a slit down on either end of them. If you maybe have just a plastic needle lying around, you can use that as well. So you really don't have to go out and spend lots of money to get started in weaving. Now you can definitely reduce the environmental impact of loom weaving. It's one of the better ones there for the environment. And like I mentioned before, it's a really, really great way to use up any scraps or leftover yarns. So obviously you're then reducing waste. If you are a crafter that works on different projects, let's say if you are into your knitting or crochet and you have any leftover yarn from that, save it for your weaving. If you've been given gifts at, Christmas and there is some ribbon that comes with your present, save that. These are really good things to incorporate in your weaving, and it makes such a lovely different textured piece as well. So try and use up as much as you can from your leftovers. I'd also recommend looking for sustainably sourced fibres. So I'm talking about organic cotton, wool, hemp, recycled yarns. Like I said previously, you could recycle your own clothes and you can cut them into strips. So maybe some old t-shirts or some old socks you could incorporate as well. But some really good businesses, some small businesses usually do say if they are sustainably sourced. And I like to look out for those. So for myself, I will specifically go onto smaller businesses anyway and have a look at their website to see what are a little bit more of an eco-friendly choice when it comes to the materials that I want to use in my weaving. And finally, what you need to get started in weaving, if you've decided, yep, I want to give it a go. Like I said previously, I would highly recommend either making a DIY cardboard loom to start off with, because then you're not really spending any money. If you've got like a leftover box from a delivery, grab that and cut out a basic square or rectangle. Or if you do want to spend a little bit of money, I would look at getting a frame loom or a circular loom. Even something like an embroidery hoop, if you may have that left over, that might be a good starting point. But I myself would normally recommend either a cardboard loom that you can create yourself or a frame loom. Then you're going to need your warp yarn. So your warp yarn needs to be a strong, non-stretchy yarn. So you're looking at something like cotton or linen. And it needs to be strong because we need that tension for our weaving. So you want to make sure that your warp yarn is strong. Then we're looking for weft yarn. So this can be pretty much anything. This is where I say use your leftover bits and pieces if you have them. So from wool, cotton, fabric strips, recycled yarns, ribbons, anything you've got lying around, you can weave into your piece. So the weft yarn is basically any wools, ribbons, anything you've got left over that you want to weave into your piece. In terms of the tools that you will need a shuttle, and it's basically to pass the yarn through the warp strands. And again, you can literally make this out of a bit of cardboard and cut 2 slits at either end and wind your wool or whatever it may be around the shuttle. Or you can use a large needle as well. If your yarn fits through the eye of that needle, you can use a needle instead to weave your yarn through your warp strands. You'll also need a comb or a fork if you have a comb lying around, or just grab yourself a fork, and it basically is used to beat the weft into place. So what I mean by that is, like, when you weave it in, you're then pushing it down so it makes some straighter lines. You will need scissors as well, obviously, to cut your wool or your fabric, whatever you are using. And sometimes you might want a measuring tape in case you want an exact length to use if you're doing an exact project there. But most of the time it's just a pair of scissors that you will need. And then lastly, to finish off the ends, I like to use a needle. Something like a tapestry needle is quite good to finish off your piece before taking it off the loom. So I hope that helps if you are a complete beginner into loom weaving, to give you some suggestions there of getting started. But the main thing is to think about, you don't need to be perfect when it comes to weaving. It's all about the process, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get started in loom weaving. Like I said before, it can be as basic as just doing it out of cardboard, and it can still be really effective. So think about those things. You don't need to start big. You can start really small, making a coaster, a mini wall hanging, a bookmark. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Start small, learn some basic weaving techniques and build up from there. I think it's such a good one. If you're looking for a really mindful craft to get started in, I think weaving is super relaxing, very mindful, very meditative. I really enjoy doing that. I find that it helps to reduce my anxiety, especially when you're just getting in the rhythm of doing maybe a simple tabby weave. It's a really nice craft to get started in. If you do end up getting started in loom weaving, please do share any of the first weaves that you make. I'd love seeing people start their journey in weaving, so feel free to let me know in the comments if you gave it a go. What materials did you use? What loom did you start off with? And feel free to send me a photo as well. So the best place you can do this is by joining my Patreon. And you can join as a free member if you just want to get involved in the little community chat that we have for this podcast. So it's a great place to talk and let us know how you're getting on with your own craft journey and pop in any photos of the makes that you make. So feel free to have a look at Patreon under Not Weave Stitch, and you can join there as a free member, or if you'd like to get more benefits, you can also become a paying member as well, and there are more benefits to different tiers there. If you'd like to see some how-to videos of different crafts, including loom weaving, I do have a YouTube channel as well, and that is under Gisela Nartin. So if you have a look on there, there's lots of very simple videos. I show you step by step how to create different projects, and I do have a loom weaving playlist for you to check out. On next week's episode, we're going to be deep diving more into loom weaving, and I'm going to be talking more about weaving terminology, because that can be very confusing. So I'm going to break it down and simplify some loom weaving terminology. As ever, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.